How on earth does a children's book with just 10 sentences, only 338 words, become an absolute cultural icon? We are, of course, talking about Maurice Sendak's masterpiece, Where the Wild Things Are. So today, we're going to pull this thing apart, piece by piece, to figure out how its simple words and incredible pictures started a full-blown revolution in children's literature.
You really can't get the book without getting the guy who wrote it. And this quote from Maurice Sendak, well, it's basically the key to everything. He just didn't buy the whole idea that childhood was this simple, happy, sugar-coated time. He knew that kids were complicated, that they felt these huge, messy, scary emotions like anger and fear, and he refused to lie to them about it. And that philosophy at the time was totally groundbreaking.
So that leads us to the big question here, right? The book was controversial. A lot of adults were freaking out, saying the monsters were way too scary. But kids absolutely loved it. And for decades, it's been held up as this beautiful, therapeutic story. So how did he do that? How did Sendak turn a story about a kid's tantrum into a safe space for children to figure themselves out? That's the puzzle we're going to solve.
All right, let's start with layer one, the plot. Now, on the surface, it's super simple, but its power comes from a structure that's basically as old as storytelling itself. The story uses this classic home away, home formula. First, Max acts out, he breaks the rules, and gets punished. He's sent away from his family. Then he goes on a journey, sailing off into the wild unknown of his own head. In that new world, he finds his power. He masters the monsters. But then he feels that pull, that longing for home, for love, for safety. And finally, he returns. And what does he find? Not just forgiveness, but unconditional love waiting for him still hot. You see, this isn't just a story about a kid in a wolf suit. It's a universal roadmap for processing a big feeling and finding your way back home. But here's the thing. The text is only a tiny piece of the puzzle. The real emotional work, the heavy lifting, that's all done by the illustrations. Sendak was an absolute genius of visual storytelling, and he used the very layout of the page to show us exactly what Max was feeling. Take a look at the first few pages. The drawings are these small, neat little boxes floating in a huge sea of white space. That's not an accident. That visually shows us the orderly, rule-filled world of Max's home. The white space is like a container, a set of boundaries that his wild energy is just about to explode out of. And then, as Max gets to his room and his imagination starts to take over, watch what happens. The pictures get bigger, they literally start breaking out of their neat little frames. His inner world is expanding, physically pushing the borders of reality right off the page. And this all leads to the book's amazing climax. For 3 full spreads, that's 6 pages, the words just disappear. The art completely takes over, exploding from edge to edge across both pages. We are thrown right into the middle of the wild rumpus. This is the absolute peak of Max's emotional release. It's pure cathartic chaos where words are pointless and feeling is everything. And this incredible effect is thanks to Sendak's very deliberate art style. He used this technique called cross-hatching, which you see in old-school engravings, to give the art all this amazing texture and depth. And he paired that with this moody, muted color palette. You're not going to find bright, happy primary colors here. And the result? It gives the story this serious, emotional weight, a timeless, almost mythical feeling. He was treating a kid's temper tantrum with the seriousness of an ancient fable. Okay, so we've seen how the plot works and how the art tells its own story. But what is this book really about? Let's dig into the psychology here, because this is where it gets truly brilliant. At its heart, this book is a psychological allegory. Those wild things, with their terrible roars and terrible teeth, they aren't just random monsters on an island. No, they are the physical form of Max's own gigantic feelings. They are his anger, his rage, his frustration made real. They are his wild things. So when Max tames them by staring into their eyes without blinking, that's not some magic trick. It's an act of what we'd now call self-regulation. He is looking his own intense, scary feelings right in the face, without flinching, and gaining control over them. Him becoming their king is this perfect metaphor for achieving emotional mastery.
And what he's showing is this incredibly healthy therapeutic model, especially for the time. See, the old way was all about repression. Bad feelings were things you had to fight or ignore to be a good kid. But Sendak's model is about integration. You don't get rid of your wild things, you acknowledge them, you face them, and you learn how to be their king. The goal isn't to be good by erasing the bad, it's to be whole by managing all of it. So where did this incredibly deep psychological insight even come from? Well, for that, we've got to look at Sendak's own life, which, believe me, was no fairy tale. Maurice Sendak's childhood was just steeped in anxiety. He was a sick kid, often stuck in bed. As the son of Polish-Jewish immigrants, he grew up haunted by the news of the Holocaust, knowing that so many of his family members had been killed. That introduced him to death and loss when he was incredibly young. And even the adult world, right there in his home, often felt scary and overwhelming to him. And this is where the monsters came from. Sendak was very clear about this. The wild things were basically caricatures of his immigrant relatives. They'd crowd around him, pinch his cheeks, and say that exact phrase, "We'll eat you up, we love you so." Just think about that for a second. It perfectly captures a child's confusion, right? Where this big declaration of love sounds just like a threat of being devoured. It's loving, but it's also terrifying. And that is the beautiful, complicated heart of the wild things. So, you take a book born from all that personal anxiety, a book that treated a kid's emotions with so much raw honesty. You just knew it was going to make some waves. And boy, did it ever. Let's look at the incredible legacy it left behind. When it was first published, a lot of adults just hated it. Seriously. They thought the monsters were grotesque, that Max's anger was being celebrated. Some well-known psychologists even warned it could traumatize children. The book was actually banned in a ton of libraries because its themes were seen as just too rebellious. But that backlash, it didn't last long. While the adults were worried, the kids adored it, and the artistic world immediately saw its genius. Just 1 year after it came out, it won the Caldecott Medal, which is like the Oscar for picture books. That award sealed the deal, and today it's pretty much universally seen as the book that kicked off the modern age of children's lit. And I mean, the numbers really speak for themselves. It's sold over 50 million copies. It's been translated into more than 40 languages. It's the fourth most checked out book in the entire history of the New York Public Library. Its appeal is just universal. And that really gets to the core of it all. Sendak's revolution was one of radical empathy. He was one of the first authors to basically look a kid in the eye and say, "Hey, I know you feel angry sometimes. I know you feel wild. And guess what? That's okay." By telling the truth about their emotional lives, he didn't scar them, he earned their trust. Forever. And that kind of leaves us with one last thing to think about. The genius of this book is that it gives kids a blueprint for accepting all the wild, messy, angry parts of themselves. It tells them those parts don't need to be crushed, they just need to be understood. Which kind of raises a question for all of us, doesn't it? What are our own wild things? What are the parts of ourselves that we, as adults, were taught to push down that maybe just need a little understanding to finally be tamed?